your seats. We are ready to start.
Very indisciplined.
No, I realize finally the sun is out and there is a competition for your attention. Thanks for coming back. My name is Katharina Sterk. I'm member of the Standing Technical Committee, and also back home, I'm head of the science department in the Federal Food Safety and Veterinary Office in Switzerland. I also maintain still an affiliation with the Royal Veterinary College, where I'm an honorary professor in veterinary public health policy. I'm going to be chairing this session on innovation and capacity development, and it's a pleasure to be able to lead this session, because I really believe we have heard a lot about advancement in science and research, but at the end of the day, it's the question about translation. How is this going to change the things we do, and how effective ultimately our work is? Do we really have impact of our work? And I think there is also the social sciences that have a very important role to play. So that's why I'm very happy that we have three very competent speakers on very different and probably still in some way connected topics or aspects of this sort of this perspective. So first of all, so we have three speakers, and then we also have a panel discussion. So if you have any questions on any of the presentations, please hold them, because we are going to have all the questions and answers together in one session. So please don't forget what you wanted to ask. And with that, I am going to introduce our first speaker, and that's Tom Wambeke. He is a United Nations senior executive with 20 years of experience in managing capacity development programs. He has a background in education sciences and a master in cultural management. And he's currently Chief Learning Innovation of the Training Center of the International Labour Organization. So we are looking really forward to have a sort of external view on topics that we, I'm sure, have in common. Over to you, Tom.
Thank you, Catherine. I will start the time right now because I have exactly 1,200 seconds. I counted them. And yes, I'm Tom Wambeke from the ITC-ILO. This is also the last abbreviation that I will use in my presentation, because I'm an active member of the AAAAA, which is the American Association Against the Abuse of Acronyms. And that happens a lot in educational technology. So working, maybe I'm also a little bit the special animal in the room, because what makes us special, like I was talking to my colleague from FAO, and he says we are a specialized agency. So well, we are also specialized, but we are unique in the fact that we're actually the same. So some of the patterns that I would like to explore with you are related to that, because I was asked, can you bring some new technology, some new innovations towards this field of capacity development? And I was thinking, well, if I look at our own training center, which is based in beautiful Turin in the north of Italy, and if I look at our training actually factory, you see here a kind of a graph with a big shot there in 2020. You all know that that was COVID, that in the past where outreach was more or less on about 10,000 constituents, we basically doubled that outreach now through technology-enhanced learning, and it's actually even this year moving towards 200,000 people. So my first question, well, if technologies and learning technologies are adding an extra layer to the work that we're currently doing, and we also want to do it at the same quality, what is this going to change in the way how we conceptualize capacity development? A second question that I want to add out here, actually I don't like the fact that we're called an international training center, because if I talk about training, you only think about the individuals, the constituents, whatever your target audience would be, if it's farmers, veterinarians, that's only a very small part of the larger ecosystem that we're trying to influence. And when I look at what we're doing at the institutional level, how institutions can change, and maybe also later at the macro level, then actually I'm hardly talking about training or capacity development interventions anymore. Then it moves completely beyond. It's not only about training, coaching, it's about knowledge management, it's about organizational development, it's about communication and advocacy. And how do I put that all into a bigger picture that really serves my goal, my mandate? So that's another reflection question that I want to bring, because I work in an innovation lab, and innovation is a very dangerous word these days because it can mean everything and nothing at the same time. And here when you said, okay, we want to use innovation to scale up our impact, what do you mean exactly by that? For me, if I would ask myself personally the question, if I have to define innovation for myself, I always refer to the unreadable language of Stephen Hawking, who unfortunately left us. But for me, that would mean intelligence is the ability to adapt to change. So that would be my personal kind of definition. But then when I look around towards our institutions, our organizations, and in this conference you were talking about a lot of changes that are currently happening, mega trends and so on. If I ask the same question to our organizational level, then I'm going to ask you the following question. Well, when the rate of change outside an organization is greater than the rate of change inside, the end is near. And actually that happened with us. In 2020 we almost could close our international training center, because if our capacity development model was only based upon physical workshop interventions, the big workshop factory, then basically we could have stopped. But we had to adapt, we had to change, and that's basically where a lot of the questions that I would like to bring in today will make more sense. With innovation, there's change, there's also a lot of resistance, and specifically in educational training settings. I use this from a foresight person. He says, well, if we always do what we have always done, we will get what we have always got. If you look at also the underlying capacity development models that you have, and if you don't disrupt them or change them a bit more radically, we will basically always face the same kind of results. And that's a discussion that I would like to have in the conversation later with the panel, because we probably will have to tweak that a little bit. The same with technologies. Every new technology is presented as a disruptor of doing something completely new. But look at the underlying models, what new technologies will do, and you will see more of the same, but maybe just under a new kind of jacket. So a lot of questions in my introduction, but also a little bit of hope, because if you look at the whole history of EdTech, educational technology that is used for training, it comes from a long way, from the traditional book that we're still heavily using, towards the more immersive tech that I've also seen appearing in some of the posters, in some of the presentations of 2 years ago in this conference. So if I have to situate ourselves a little bit from the books towards the immersive tech, I would say that still a lot of our organizations are trying to cope. How do we establish a normal, traditional, let's say, e-learning platform where we add maybe in a second stage some interactive, collaborative, social and other type of elements. That's why technology is changing at an exponential change, human beings and our capacity arms a little bit slower. That's why I would say that if we would look at the world of L&D, we are still a little bit behind in actually adopting like all these new forms of learning that you hear, from micro-learning to immersive learning, etc. So I'm going to, the problem with the presentation here, as I only have 1,000 seconds left, there's so many opportunities that I could put on the table, but I have chosen 3. By looking at your program, by looking at maybe some opportunities that might worthwhile to be discussed in a later stage. Something that I also would like to discuss, if I look at a lot of the underlying models of our capacity building interventions are still infused with an old industrial model, where you have the funnel on top, where the subject matter expertise is determined by a few selected individuals, and then everybody goes through the kind of same type of funnel. And this is what I fundamentally would like to question to basically see where innovation is possible. And it's with a model that I've seen in other presentations that people speak about learning paths. It's not just about, your workshop factory model. You try to add some e-learning on it. You try to add some other interactive elements, and so that we're not speaking anymore of an ad hoc intervention, but a longer period of different interventions using different methodologies and different technologies. But what are the type of technologies that I used to refer to? I'm going to add 3 of them that I've seen a little bit, even in the title. Just checking if I'm right on time, because I promised Catherine not to go over time, and I'm still at time, 7 minutes. So if I looked, and if you look also at your target audiences, if you would think in terms of technologies, what is the main type of technology that is actually embedded in their daily life? And actually, when I started at the center 17 years ago in 2007, I used a picture. This was the picture that I used. This is a picture of 2005. And the picture of 2005, you see it because of the old mobile phones. It said the mobile device will be the world's primary connection tool to the internet in 2020. Now, this picture is completely outdated, not only in terms of technology, but when I showed that picture in 2005, I had the reaction of the audience, yeah, that's fine, mobile, but that's only for the ones who have access to it. That's a Western phenomenon. Nobody has access to smartphones in rural Indonesia and so on. Actually, a few years later, technology actually was much faster. I was working in rural Indonesia where farmers had access to the latest version of BlackBerries in one way or another. And if you would look even further, this would not be the question. But it's just a good starting point. If this is the accessible technology, how can we make it meaningful for our constituents? And the technology is usually not the issue here. The big issue is our old way of thinking, because what I've seen with a lot of micro-learning and mobile learning programs is basically, I would call it a massive content dump. What we're doing is basically massively dumping of PDFs, PowerPoint presentation that actually nobody is going to read on his mobile phone. So how can we create meaningful interactions? And that basically is questioning ourselves, how can we create meaningful engagement with a mobile device so that effectively micro-learning would be possible? And therefore, we have to ask us a lot of questions. It's not only about the content that is out there. It should be a mobile-first approach. It's not only about the interactions. It's also about the multiple assessments. Can we use this tool before, during, and after? Can we use collaborative elements? Can we add gamifications? And these are the types of questions that we sometimes forget to ask to really have an enriching micro-mobile learning experience. And half of what I see on the learning platforms out there is just not adapted to the devices that our constituents actually have. There's nothing wrong with mobile learning. There's something wrong with the underlying pedagogical models. 2 years ago, I saw this kind of thing presented here at the conference, where you saw very interesting elements of micro-assessments that actually could drive through mobile devices. But I think we need to go on steps further, beyond learning and training. I was looking at the poster conference, and I see that micro-learning here for FAO is not only used as a kind of a progressive learning pathway, but also a toolkit as an emergency tool, but also as a communication type of device. So again, if technology enters, let's ask us a lot of questions on how we could use it in a meaningful way. And then maybe also connect it with the other questions that I will come later with technologies. Here, for example, in Brazil, in the vocational training sector, we have launched a few kind of specialized GPTs that were connected with mobile phones, where a constituent could ask a simple question and had actually a very technical, detailed answer. When we started this project, everybody was asking us technical questions on the relevance, on the data privacy, on the hallucinations, but I can explain you later while we had this kind of chatbot-related micro-learning device, which is now actually showing a few results in terms of impact in winning time, but also a lot of unintended consequences of, okay, technology can really change the way we look at how we basically learn. A second one, and I was looking at a presentation from the Royal Veterinary College in the UK, and then also some researchers from Italy that 2 years ago presented the first pilot project on immersive learning. How can you use virtual reality and augmented reality in the type of training that you are doing? One of the problems also when we have when a new technology is presented, we have half of the understanding of what it really is. If I would have to explain what immersive learning meets, I would take another hour to basically explain all the different affordances out there. What we really need to do is basically move one step further and ask us the question in training. Is it about here? I mean, the competency-based models are coming up here. Is it about skills training, practical training? Is it knowledge-based training? Is it behavior-altering training? And then looking at some of the applications that are out there that we could actually use. Within the ILO, for example, on occupational safety and health, we have plenty of skills-based training that are now done by immersive technologies. And again, we get the same question. The technology is not available for our people in a rural vocational training institution. We said, what technology? Yes, these big Oculus glasses. I agree, but what about augmented reality? So now in our TVET centers, we have, through simple mobile phones, 3D visualization of machines that we can use in their educational trajectories. And actually, the most stuff is happening on behavior altering, what we are doing right now in soft skills training through different applications like body swaps and so on. So what I'm asking, is the technology adding any value on what we are doing? If it's just setting up a glass or using a mobile application to be online, to be digital, then the extra value, according to me, is zero. If it's doing something that really transforms something, that really adds something that I cannot do in a face-to-face setting, then it's really a cool element. Giving you the example with body swaps, we are basically simulating interactive conversations, and they actually register my conversation and also my body behavior. After the 2 minutes of talking, it changes the body swap, and I see myself through the eyes of my partner. That's something I cannot do in reality, and that's something where basically the technology gives me something that I cannot do without. And I think it's to every technology we need to ask the same question. It's not about the technological headsets for me, it's about changing mindsets that are out there and also different ways of dealing with things. We've done that in times of necessity together with our partners of World Food Programme on preparedness training and emergency training during COVID. We could not go to the military base zone in Germany where they did their training, but we have created a kind of a whole simulation in VR. Was it successful because of the VR? No, it was successful because the colleagues, the subject matter experts, had excellent simulation models that already were scenarios that could not miss. And actually using it through a virtual reality thing was much more richer than having endless interactive webinars out there. I'm still in my time zone, so that's actually good. If I go too fast, we can slow down. Just give me a sign. Which brings me to almost the next one, but I ask you the same question. Within your field, within your expertise field, would there be entry points? Because people are used to three-dimensional learning, and most of our learning affordances are shaped in 2 dimensions, from a book towards an audiovisual thing. Can we really learn in 3 dimensions? And looking at this project, which was presented 2 years ago, most of these projects were presented post-COVID. Interesting pilots, initial experiments. My question would be, is there scope? Can we scale them up? Can they basically do an outreach beyond, let's say, the pilots program? And here also some interesting reflections to share later, which brings me to the last, let's say, technological hype that is out there, because every year there's a new technological hype. I'm talking about the generative AI hype. Everything is about AI these days. I looked around also on the different interventions and asked myself, is this something that we also could do that would add value on your learning and training interventions? That would be my first question. When I asked the question to my own colleagues, there was a big problem because there was a very polarized view on AI. It was, or you're radically against, or you're radically an advocate. And we had to work a lot with my colleagues on AI literacy, because none of them actually understood what AI really was. And we have actually developed master classes on how you could use AI in capacity development interventions. They are freely available on the internet. I'll show you the link. These are, let's say, 2 3D-minute videos that in a very simple language explain you what could be the added value for AI in your learning and training cycle. And once we have aligned, let's say, the AI literacy, once we knew what we were talking about, the first thing what we basically did was saying, where can you not use AI? Basically debunking a lot of myths, because there was a lot of fear that people said, okay, AI will replace basically trainers, or AI can be used to resolve any particular problem that you have out there. Getting into this increased higher AI literacy all these, let's say, e-learning myths were heavily debunked. And that made place for, okay, what can we use them right now for? Could we use, for example, AI to customize the content of our training to specific thematic groups and have a bit more of a kind of a personal learning trajectory? Or could we do something, and seen in a lot of the poster sessions, a massive amount of data, and some of the applications were still feeding the data in a manual way. Is there a way that we could basically also infuse that with some AI so that we win time and then have a bit more time to do the analytical part, and maybe also see in learning where could we engage in some of the predictive analytics, or basically where could we wipe out the boring work, you know, the administrative tasks that are often linked to the learning platforms that we are busy with. So a lot of openings in there that we are seeing with this, and then we can start to combine AI with microlearning, with all the different components that I have basically put into it. And then asking it for your field, where could you connect AI with diagnostic tools? Where could you connect AI maybe with specialized GPTs, I think, or here I saw in the poster also a kind of a diagnostic kind of tool. What would an AI-infused thing mean in this kind of sentence, or a specialized GPT for the fast responsiveness on some of the questions that you are dealing with. So these were a few questions that I wanted to ask, and also to combine them a bit with different questions on innovation and capacity development in general. As I said, these were 3 opportunities. I have a normal presentation that presents you to 10 different opportunities, but it's always the same loop that I'm going through. Because if you look at a good capacity development intervention model, it basically links with, I would say, a picture that is also AI generated with, I would say, a larger ecosystem where all these different elements are interconnected and reinforce each other. And when you talk about organizational change or institutional change, one of the big issues that we have with our models is the following, is that we're talking about, you know, a big complex system. We have a solution. We're going to develop a chatbot that is going to solve all the kind of issues, and it's a very linear view of looking at a complex reality. When you have the kind of ecosystem point of view, you see all these underlying branches that really are needed to integrate into the capacity development interventions. And that brings us very close to what Cortney later also will bring. We need to look at all the invisible things also out there, and not just at some of the fancy technologies that I have presented here. But if you look at this way with the technologies, then that's already one major step ahead, because that means that you have a vision. Too often, projects have a unilateral vision. It's only the subject matter vision. It's only the pedagogical vision. I looked at the mega trends, and it's going much more into, would I say, transdisciplinary visions. If I look at my own team, I have at least 5 different disciplines working, and I'm still trying to push for a behavioral lens, the thing. But there are many lenses that we need in order to have this kind of useful intervention mix. And it's only with that that you have that kind of holistic vision. Unfortunately, we often don't have the vision, and we often have, if you don't have the right vision, you basically go into the wrong direction. And you know what happens if you go into the wrong direction? The following: if you go in the wrong direction, technology will get you there faster. So that's also something that basically needs to be reminded, because often we forget to basically connect with what was the real issue that we were trying to solve. A lot of the technological projects jump immediately on the next stage and forget what the AI, the immersive tech, and the other thing was trying to resolve. So that urgent real need, combined with the following thing: if I look in the institutions, and some of them need almost a 6 months or a 1 year time lapse to develop a curriculum or to implement something, then I don't say that they're doing the wrong way, but they sometimes get stuck in analysis paralysis, while I think we probably need more iterative approaches that do not start from a complete framework. Okay, 1 more minute, we agreed with the thing. So my last minute would say, okay, to avoid that, and because we're here in Spain, I said I'm going to make reference to an important artist. It was Pablo Picasso who said, well, to know what you're going to draw, you have to start drawing. And if you start drawing through multiple iterative feedback loops, you're probably going to get much faster than waiting 1 year that a curriculum appears that is already fully outdated by the date that you have actually published it. So, to finalize, ask the right questions. That would be my first type of element to each of the different technologies that are out there. And then finally, you probably will come into a kind of a state which I call the metacognitive learning state. Secretary General Gutierrez, 2 years ago, we asked, what do you think is the most important skill to have for the future generation of people? And he said, it's basically learning how to learn. And that is basically learn, unlearn, and relearn as a kind of an important skill to survive in an ever-changing situations. Look at yourself when AI came up to you. Look at yourself when you started to deal with ChatGPT. Look at basically what you had to do is basically re-question yourself and not use the old models that we have been habituated to. But maybe some links will be given also in the next presentation where we look at from a behavioral lens. So that was it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom, for this whirlwind presentation. So if you have lots of questions or maybe need some more illustration for some of the many things that were now sort of thrown up in the air, please take note and keep them in mind for the discussion. With that, we move on to the second speaker, and that's Cortney Price. Cortney Price has a background in social science and behavior science, and also a certificate in change management. So that sort of makes already the link to the needs for change, I think, that have been sort of shown. And he works at the FAO, where he's the lead behavior science team, and if I researched correctly, he also has runs a consultancy on communication and behavior change.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. It's really a pleasure to be with you today and an honor to follow Tom. And thank you, Tom, for setting such high expectations for my presentation. I'll try to meet them. I have to be honest, I'm a first-time session attendee, but a long-time session fan. Being part of FAO for a while, working along the lines with so many different aspects of animal health science, risk communication, other activities. It's my first time being in the session, but I appreciate the opportunity to contribute to this innovation platform, really pushing boundaries on what we can achieve in terms of biosecurity, preparedness, and prevention. So that bridges me to the first word in my presentation, tomorrow. Preparedness is about the future, and the future is kind of challenging when it comes to behavior. We really struggle to actually change future behavior. It's a really interesting challenge, and I want to dig into that today with you all. Basically, when we think about the future, I want to say, what is the future that we're hoping for, right? So, big picture, many of you, almost all of you probably know, FAO's future is a future that's food secure, a future in which people have enough to eat, they can have nutritious, equitable, sustainable choices, and that the world is a better place because food and agriculture is transforming it so. Just think about the power that what humanity was able to achieve when we obtained control over our food sources. That's the power of agriculture, right? So this is an amazing future in which we imagine people behaving in such a way that these goals are supported. FAO talks about them as the four betters, but we can drive right down into preparedness, biosecurity. These are all similar goals where they have behavioral packages associated with them. If we think about animal husbandry, if we think about monitoring, surveillance, if we think about even the policy-making, decision-making, funding decisions, these are all driven by people doing something. And if we're talking about transformation, it's people doing something differently. So putting our training in the perspective of trying to achieve change is really important. And to be honest, that's a world I definitely want to live in, where people are making decisions and behaviors that are for the good of people and planet, right? That's an amazing future to have. How do we get there? Well, we need to influence behavior, right? That's kind of the key goal of so many of our institutions, and definitely a key aspect of what EUFMD is trying to achieve, trying to influence behavior for good. How do we normally do it? I would argue that, by and large, we're still quite involved in a business-as-usual approach involving knowledge about information. We are developing incredible amounts of PDFs, and we are doing a lot of incredible trainings. Now, these trainings are extremely powerful, useful. These PDFs are rich in information and important guidance. This knowledge that we share is critical. And actually, we find out that when we're looking at project design or we're talking about initiatives, it always crops up. Okay, when's the training? What are we going to do next? It's kind of always on our mind because training has become our default behavior change mechanism. But I want us to ask ourselves today, is it working well enough? What else could we do? Regardless of the model we want to choose for biosecurity preparedness, you could argue that there are three main measures that we want to use to help protect our animals, keep our farms safe, produce safe food, reduce disease incursion. At each step, we need a person to do this. Maybe we have our superhero vets helping farmers vaccinate. We have vets, extension workers, farmers working together to develop biosecurity, to use biosecurity measures to change farm structures and procedures and protocols. So workers are doing things, quote unquote, the right way. And we have millions of people daily using on a daily basis, trying to do the right thing on their farms. At each stage, at each aspect, it's not the knowledge that's doing the work, it's the people. So we need to connect this idea. How are our trainings enabling people to take future action? We kind of sometimes have this intuition or a kind of assumption that once we deliver this knowledge, we enable this capacity, we have our training, then the behavior just happens. We just get on with it. It's almost like we're saying, okay, do this, do that, do the other thing, call us if you have any questions. Now, I know this is being overly provocative. This is not how EFMD approaches its training. But I would see some nodding faces, so it means there's some truth in this, that we kind of sometimes rest on our laurels and we're used to this knowledge transfer model, even though we've long ago abandoned it officially. And then we kind of get surprised when biosecurity or preparedness doesn't happen. It's a shock to us. It's a common pain point I hear all across FAO and other organizations. We've invested so much in awareness, in knowledge, in capacity, and I'm going back next year to deliver essentially the same presentation. Right? This has happened to all of us. So when we talk about our traditional trainings, we definitely are good at the obvious things. Tom's talked about some of the more clear or obvious factors that drive behavior. This comes from the COM-B model or the behavior change wheel by Susan Michie and others. It's not the end-all, be-all collection of behavioral insights, but it's a really good model for understanding what drives behavior. And behavioral levers of capability, we're talking about, our trainings definitely work about knowledge and skills. A lot of our trainings talk about motivation. How can I get people excited about this? How can I help people build the right goals? How can I reinforce the behavior? How can I leverage optimism or pessimism? Risk and fear are often used to drive behavior. If you don't do X, you're going to have to pay the penalty of Y. Maybe that motivates people. And of course, access. Access is a really important thing. Do we have access to tools? Do we have access to resources? I want people to wash their drinkers in the poultry farm, but there's no running water. Okay, that's kind of really important, and if you don't have that opportunity, you can't do the behavior. But there's this whole cloudy area of other things that are quite hidden that we'll talk about a little bit later. But for first, let's just try our traditional approach, okay? I'm going to give you an instruction, right? And I would like all of us to just do it. I want you to feel free to look silly, sound silly. I think we're in a safe room full of friends. I'm going to show you a color, and I want you to say the color out loud, quickly. I just want you to shout the color, and the louder you shout it, the better. So that's the instructions. Any questions? No? Okay, good. Here we go.
Green, blue, red, yellow, green.
What happened? Were my instructions not clear enough? That interesting pause when your brain was trying to decide, do I read or do I identify the color? What happens? And this really powerful urge to read. How more often are we reading than identifying colors by their Pantone? We're mostly reading, right? So this was a really interesting moment, and this is because we just engaged in something called the Stroop test, and most people get this wrong. It's really hard to get it right because it really elucidates a tension between two different stimuli that are competing in our brain. One is the visual color, the other is a language cue, right? And our brain struggles to decide which one to follow. And this reveals this kind of effort that's required to do the right thing. it's not obvious. Even if biosecurity is the right choice, it's not always the obvious or easy choice. Even just looking at this should give you some discomfort, and I apologize, but it's all for a good cause. These stimuli are telling you opposite things, and it creates a sense of cognitive dissonance. Where else do we see cognitive dissonance? In our biosecurity and preparedness work. There's what we say should happen, there's what we show and demonstrate, and then there's what actually happens. And that cognitive dissonance is ever present, and I feel like we've almost become a little bit immune to it, where we manage it. We're disconcerted by it, but we know it's kind of almost expected. I'm going to go back and try again. I'm going to try this training again. Cognitive dissonance is not just on the one-off farm in Ghana, which I was showing you before, was a poultry farm. FAO research itself a few years ago showed a huge disconnect between people knowing about AMR, understanding the right use of antibiotics, and then when it came down to actually applying antimicrobial stewardship, they didn't do it. Knowledge and attitudes totally disconnected from practices. And this is not crazy. Actually, this is our really big opportunity of learning. This is human. This is normal. The intention-action gap, the distance between what we say we're going to do and what we actually do, is a human trait. It's a key part of how our psychology. It's how we survive and manage way too many requests on our cognitive apparatus and end up doing something because we don't have time to entertain all options. So the intention-action gap is real, and instead of fearing it or trying to avoid it, we need to better understand it. And then when we're talking about actions in the future, the long-term future, training towards a new mindset I heard discussed, then we're really thinking about a very particular challenge. And I'll use a very facile example to describe just one of the barriers to the future action, and that is Night Guy. Let me introduce you to Night Guy. Night Guy really loves partying. He's up all night. He knows the best clubs, the best musicians, and he's really used to going to bed around 2 or 3. Sometimes he overindulges in some other activities. But this is Morning Guy. He's got to get up early. He's got to go to work. He's got to deliver the presentation. If Night Guy stays up till late in the night and morning, it's not his problem that Morning Guy only gets 5 hours sleep. Night Guy says, I don't care, I'm Night Guy. Let Morning Guy deal with the problem tomorrow. This comes from an American comic, Jerry Seinfeld, so I'm using a very national example, but I think it taps into something really true and real about ourselves, is that there are many versions of ourselves inhabiting the same consciousness. We are different people at different times of the day, depending on how hungry we are, who else is in the room, how much sleep we've got, how happy, sad, or other we are, how sunny or rainy. Did you guys feel a little differently yesterday than you do today? Night Guy and Morning Guy are part of ourselves, and the problem is Night Guy is always going to do what he's going to do. Present bias, we overvalue the present compared to the future. It's not just about this intuitive sense. It's also in our cognition. I want to do another experiment with you. This time you don't have to yell out loud. Ask yourself, which of these options do you prefer? 100 euros today. I'm going to give you 100 euros right after this presentation. Or 150 euros in 1 month. Most people want the $100 right now. Hey, tonight we can go out with Night Guy and have a great time. What about 100 euros 10 years from now? Don't change your email because I'll be emailing you 10 years from now. I'll give you 100 euros. Or 150 euros 10 years plus 1 month. What do you choose? Most people are happy to wait the extra month for just 50 euros more. Okay, this is totally inconsistent. 150 euros is more than 100 euros. It's beneficial to wait 1 more month, right? But then why wouldn't I wait 1 day, 1 week, 1 month for the extra 50 euros in the previous example? This is, behavioral science calls this inconsistent time preferences, and it's ingrained into us, right? Like present bias. So we are making calculations with a faulty calculator. Or rather, we don't understand our calculus well enough. Long-term gains are far away from us, not just temporally, but also psychologically. It's called psychological distance. It's almost as if the version of us that lives in the present is very different from the version of us that lives in the future. And that reveals this idea of dual system cognition, that we have 2 thinking systems, one an automatic system, Homer, and another a more logic-based system, Spock. And these two systems work together, but they're not equal. Our automatic system is much more powerful and much more present. Our thinking system is tired, laborious, it's not always active, it takes a lot more energy to engage him. This means we often think we're a lot more rational than we are. So if our system one, our automatic behavior, is really driving the bus, then we need to think about training. Why are we designing trainings for system two? Why are we designing trainings for the weakest part of our decision-making apparatus? Why are we focusing on transferring knowledge to the actor in our mind that has the least power to use it? Of course, we need knowledge. I'm not saying we don't, but this is a question for all of us. This cognitive dissonance is also for us to think about our own selves. Will we use this information to change the way we design our trainings? Or we will continue, as Tom had proposed before, to do the same thing we've done before. I'm going to change the date on my PowerPoint and go back there. Okay, Courtney, you got me. Yes, we should change. I have heard this before. What can I do? You can use behavioral science. Behavioral science is the study of behavior, yes, but it's also the study of how to influence behavior. It's a rigorous methodology, and I am often flabbergasted by our willingness to invest millions in understanding the natural science problem and almost zero funding to understand the social science problem. I think clades are extremely interesting, but I don't know if that's going to really help me understand how to influence behavior on a poultry farm. So the question is, can we invest in rigorous methodologies to experiment and understand ourselves? So when we have the scientific knowledge we need to transform into behavior, we can actually do it in a way that has less friction. And as Tom also mentioned, it's a really critical aspect, not just for FAO, but for the UN system in general. The main premise is if you want someone to do something, make it easy. You want them not to do it, make it hard. How many of our trainings actually do the opposite? What time you join, who has the Zoom password, is it on Teams or Zoom? Let me read through the instructions one more time. The email's 20 pages long. I'm not criticizing anyone. We're all there. But context matters. So everything we do in our context drives those behaviors we want or don't want. I'll just say really briefly, behavioral science is also a process. So what I'm advocating for is to use this process of behavioral design as a potential way to have a learning journey that I think Tom also mentioned. This can be our foil for experiencing change before we actually believe we need it. What do I mean by reimagining training with behavioral science? Let's take an example, and I didn't choose a foot bath or other very specific biosecurity measures on farms, just to keep us a little bit outside our zone. Slaughterhouse hygiene. We had the benefit of working with the Mozambican government, different folks in parts of Africa, FAO offices, and the first step of the behavioral science process was define the change we want to see. We went collaboratively. Instead of saying, these are our protocols, do you do them, don't you do them? We said, what are your frictions on the farm? People said, actually, Carl is always bumping into me and I'm spilling, and this is keeping the clean area where I'm supposed to chop the chicken is dirty. Or I'm always running out of buckets. So people came up with the change they wanted to see and was together with behavioral scientists, veterinarians, microbiologists, decided these are the behaviors we want to see. Then we said, okay, well, where are the problems? Why aren't these behaviors happening? We mapped out the process at the slaughterhouse and wet markets in Mozambique. And this is the drawing by the stakeholders themselves thinking about their process really for the first time in a strategic way. This looks like something we copied and pasted from other countries, but it's not. It came from the experts and the stakeholders, the butchers and traders on the ground. I'm having trouble distinguishing between the buckets. I'm not sure how to organize the pattern. I don't know. We're bumping into each other, etc. This process flow was the behavioral intervention that was co-created. So before we convinced people that they needed to do this, we actually helped them discover it in their own way themselves. And then we tested it. 2 control, 2 treatment in slaughterhouses, and they're very promising results, mostly on hand washing, which went way up into the 90 percentile. We had clean areas over 67% more clean than before, designated clean areas. And I think the biggest opportunity is the ownership aspect. That this initiative wasn't a behavior change intervention by experts, but a learning journey by a community. And this learning journey created ownership. And these people are currently looking at ways they can apply the behavioral design process to other problems. It's a way to think about our problems. Instead of saying, why don't I get up early? I need a new alarm clock. What are the things that are leading to me staying up so late, right? And can I change those things before? So this is, and I should say, on both sides of this training journey is a co-creative learning experience by the trainers as well. We're breaking down the barrier of who's an expert and who's not, and trying to bring our skills as a community together to solve a problem. So we're not going there with the answer, but we're going there with the process. And the Kenya office and East Africa team that worked on this changed their way of working because of this experience, and is now applying it. They have a really exciting project going to start in pastoralism to try to promote safe and efficient pastoralism systems in East Africa coming up. Back to our model, I'm almost done. These three ideas, capability, motivation, opportunity, we hear them all the time. And we may think of the obvious things: knowledge, skills, goals, orientation, environment. What about those hidden factors? Well, let's look at them. Behavioral science helps us identify and understand the power of attention. How attractive is something? How easy is it to recall? What systems around us help us regulate our habits? Do we have the capacity to self-regulate? Why not? What are our beliefs about ourselves? Do we believe that we are something called, do we have a self-efficacy understanding or a self-efficacy bias? There's something called learned helplessness, which can really be a major barrier to uptaking any new technology. This is going to date me, but I remember trying to teach my parents how to program their VCR. They were convinced they could not do it. Convinced, right? But they could. And in the end, now they're the ones that are, capturing the TV shows themselves. Long story short, the opportunity here is to see what's hidden, to use behavioral science as a tool to not only understand behavior, but change the context around behavior so we can influence it properly through training that is becoming an experience or a journey. And to put it simply, the psychological, social, and automatic aspects of behavioral levers, we are forgetting them. We are leaving them behind, right? So we can't afford to keep focusing just on the obvious. We need to focus also on the hidden aspects of behavior. So to transform training, I'm proposing reimagining trainings as experiential, co-created, co-owned journeys. Improving uptake, treat your trainings also as behavioral experiments. What do people need to do to successfully complete your training? What will get them to sign up, right? Is it really a laborious process? Is there a lot of friction? Why would they be motivated to attend? Why wouldn't they? Is anyone else doing it? Are you asking them to do something counter-normative? Don't just assume that because you believe those actions are really important, that's enough. We need to look at the environment from their perspective. What are the barriers to completion? And most of all, do we have budget to actually develop evidence around why people do what they do? Or are we just guessing? I'm a person, you're a person. It's very natural for me to say, you know what? I probably imagine that the reason Tom's not doing this is because he's XYZ. But I don't have evidence for it. So let's invest in actually developing that evidence, experimenting rigorously to have better understanding with our communities of why they do what they do, why we don't do what we say. Finally, that is not a one-off, but rather a new habit we need to form in our community. Are we going to be developing this evidence regularly, contextually? Can we think about systems in a way that involve behavior, right? And will we use the tools that are now readily available to us to augment the amazing, powerful, and passionate goals you have as preparedness and biosecurity experts to really transform livestock systems? And you have that capacity, and you have demonstrated it through EFMD's incredible journey to have been successful at this in many respects. So now is the question, do we want to use attack cognitive dissonance and use the tools available to develop evidence also of the human factor and how we can work better at a human-centered design level to make sure that our capacity development programs and initiatives actually change behavior for good? Leaving you with a quote AJ Jacobs is a self-described human guinea pig. He just completed a year living according to the US Constitution. He's done other things where he went vegan, or he's done other things. So he goes extreme to try to adapt a behavior even if he doesn't believe in it. It's easier to act your way into a new way of thinking or a mindset than it is to think your way into a new way of acting. So we're using the wrong entry point, everybody. We need to use action experience. If I start to do the thing, I will slowly start to think the way of a person who does the thing, right? This isn't a silver bullet. There's many other things to discuss. I'm trying to be provocative, so thank you for your understanding. And last point on technology. Exactly agree with Tom. And AI, robots, VR, AR, extremely compelling. The critical question we need to ask is, what is the behavioral barrier this tool helps me overcome? If I don't know the answer to that question, then I have no idea if I should use that tool. No idea whatsoever. And noise, cognitive noise that we create through all of our information that we're bombarding through new means, creates a new barrier. So careful with our technology. Sometimes it's creating barriers rather than alleviating them. Thank you for your time and appreciate your attention.
Thank you very much. And we'll go immediately to our third speaker. And that's Barbara Alessandrini. She's a capacity building manager with very extensive experience. She's originally from Italy and has worked there, gaining very important experience before joining the World Organization for Animal Health in 2020, where she is responsible for the development and management of the capacity building program. Over to you, Barbara.
Thank you so much. I don't have fireworks, I'm sorry, only some evidence of what my colleagues anticipated. So I'll try to make my long story short. I want to present some maybe concrete applications of what the previous speakers have so in a beautiful way presented by talking a little bit of the capacity building system at WOA. But as innovation is not only technology, is not only fireworks, I also want to dedicate some time to present a new guide that we have published for community animal health workers. So we will see at changes and advancements from different perspectives. At WOA, we have this beautiful capacity building system that is made by the PVS program and the training system. And I think that not everyone is really aware of what PVS is here. So very quickly, it is a system that evaluates and re-evaluates over time capacities of veterinary services and aquatic animal health services of our members, and provide also a costing tool to try to support through financial investments the development on country priorities. And then there is also some targeted support to help members to improve. While the training system is a system that is based on standards, quality standards. This is not fireworks. It is what is needed to have a quality system. And it is also based on delivering appropriate courses, appropriate learning opportunities to the different educational levels. Again, not fireworks, but needed to make things in a consistent way. The learning platform that manages all the system is organized across 16 macro domains that we call competency packages. This starts being a little bit of fireworks because this is really the system that we have developed to try to match the training system with the WOA knowledge system, meaning the standards, which is the change we expect by supporting veterinary services through both PVS and training system. The change we expect is an improvement in the standards application of the international standards. So these are the two pillar programs, and look at this beautiful picture. When I designed it, I felt so creative and so innovative, and then, Tom, you did the same. And so you anticipated, but look at how we have designed the two systems, an institutional support through the PVS, and individual support through individual learning opportunities. They both need to aim at improving health system and obtaining the results of better standards implemented. The PVS has here years and years of reports that have been packed into PDF files for years. And our fireworks started when we decided that this enormous amount of data needed to be unlocked and used in a smart way. So we have developed an information system that not only provides the possibility to make quantitative analysis on PVS evaluations, but also qualitative analysis. So starting from raw text and using natural language processing, what we have tried to do has been to extract key concepts and umbrella concepts so that the enormous quantity of data could be organized in a more efficient and in a more usable way. This morning, I heard a colleague from Congo mentioning how difficult it is to get funds from the pandemic fund. Well, the World Bank is now using the PVS information system and the PVS data to evaluate countries' capacities and to monitor and evaluate progresses over funded projects. So this is an opportunity. I'm not saying that it's not difficult to access these funds, but what we're trying to do is just to help members to find a way to improve their capacity to produce priorities and bankable projects in one way. And I want to show that today, with the system, we are able to make monitoring and evaluation and re-evaluation over time. We can establish trends, and we can exploit what is included in this text and make and perform impact evaluation. So, as the speakers before me said, we need to be patient for long-term gains because this effort is really producing this pathway, and we expect and hope that it will be used more and more. And let me make an example. So I'm imagining that I need to develop a learning need assessment to develop learning opportunities courses for a region, so for example, Africa, and that the contents that I need to address are related to laboratory capacity. So if I look at the system, I'm sorry that I cannot make some kind of live demonstration, but these screenshots should somehow explain. So I am in Africa, I have all the reports of the region, I have all the countries of the region, and I can make a selection through the critical competencies, the 45 dimensions that we consider when we perform an evaluation. So I have selected the critical competencies related to veterinarians, veterinary paraprofessional, education, training, etc. And I've linked them to the competencies that are related to laboratory capacity. So I get a number of detailed recommendations, but also umbrella recommendation and frequent recommendation. So you see that what experts recommend is to implement quality systems. It means it does not exist in 24 different contexts, that there is the need to develop training programs, etc. And if I click on any of these dimensions, I will have more detailed information as well as text extracted from original tests. This is another way to present the same. Now I can make the same analysis on the weaknesses. So again, I select them in the same critical competencies, and this is what I obtain. So I understand that there is an insufficient number of veterinarians. It's something I cannot address through training, unfortunately. There is no quality assurance. I can investigate, understand more, and address this problem, etc. And again, if I click on one of those weaknesses, I can get more detailed information and the original text. I can do the same with strengths. So what are we now trying to use all this, and how are we going to link all this to the training system? We are developing an additional module that is dedicated to learning need assessment. So we are creating a bridge between performances and workforce competencies. So system change, individual change, they are aligned, they must work together. And the idea is to extract data from PVS information system, connect them with the 16 boxes I presented, so the macro areas that are developed across the WOA knowledge. But again, as it was said by the previous speaker, we really need to understand the target. We really need to strengthen changes, but to understand the changes we want to support, we need to know the whys. So if data, as they are presented, allow us to understand what is not working, the why needs to be developed through a concrete and active collection of information through traditional mechanisms like interviews or focus group or surveys, etc. And then process all the information to develop consistent and oriented to change learning opportunities. As I said, this is not all. We have another dimension to consider, and as innovation is not only an action of the process of innovating, but also new products, I'm very proud to present today something that we are announcing right in these days. So it's the first time any of us present this product to our community, which is the new competency and curriculum guidelines for community animal health workers. I've really appreciated this morning Giovanni mentioning the role that community reporters, disease reporters played in the work he was presented in reporting data on diseases. But at the same time, we had session number 7 today, where a number of presenters, of speakers mentioned the difficulties to achieve certain categories. And community animal health workers are really sometimes at the farthest front of delivery of veterinary services. So after taking care of veterinarians and of veterinary paraprofessionals, the idea is to have now guidelines and curriculum for competencies and curriculum development of this category of professionals. This product is a guideline, and it's organized across 11 modules, and each modules have core and additional competencies. So we paid through an ad hoc group that developed this work, an ad hoc group of experts, and Chris Bartel is there. Okay, my time is over. Up. I will be very quick. So we developed these guidelines by defining competencies that are already learning outcomes. So the intention is that this tool is used by in education providers, by training institutions or individuals that need to train community animal health workers. They are very basic, very simple, very understandable, and also very measurable. So the ambition is really to provide tools for a recognition of this category and for a responsibilization and formalization of their instruction across the countries that use these kind of professionals. And next step will be to have an online tool to measure the distance between existing programs and the ideal program, the benchmark that is in this analysis. Complementary tool for this work is the handbook that Vétérinaires Sans Frontières International, partner of WOA for the development of the guidelines, has developed to provide additional recommendations on how to manage community animal health workers training programs. So there are 7 pillars that have to be considered when developing these programs. These recommendations are for all the stakeholders that are interested and involved in the use of engagement, not use of community animal health workers. And the ambition is really to have elements for regulation and integration of this target of professionals into the veterinary system. Very briefly, in conclusion, to drive change for a stronger and more resilient veterinary workforce, innovation must fit the needs. So you need to calibrate the level and kind of innovation to the situation you have to face. Understand the context and the needs, and design solutions that are oriented to satisfy that context and that specific need. Data for analysis and decision-making is essential. However, the human factors have to be considered. So talk to people. And this is also a way to listen to needs and to understand which needs are. Assure also sustainability. The word sustainability has appeared here and there, but resource mobilization is today really a big constraint. And we are moving towards more stronger public-private partnerships, for example. We are trying to explore additional pathways, but it's really important that when we think at something, we need to be patient, to quote again my colleagues, and think at medium to long-term opportunities and outcomes. And be sure that the target is achieved so that users can be empowered. Thank you for your attention, and allow me to acknowledge the work of these two teams that have developed these two innovations at WOA. Thanks.
Okay, can I ask all the speakers to join me on the podium? And can I ask you to now think of your questions? While you do that, I would also like to introduce an additional person who is joining me on the podium, and that's Marcello Nardi. He's Chief Learning Officer at EUFMD since 2020, and he has a background in communication studies and also a master in training and development. Welcome.
Thanks.
Okay, do we have any questions? We don't have a lot of time for discussion, so if you do have questions, please come forward quickly. Yes, please.
Okay, thank you for these very nice presentations. I would like to ask to be a little more specific on the implementation of biosecurity measures of the farmers. And all this with Cortney, especially with the behavioral science. And I was thinking, do you think it would be a nice, let's say, approach, because training always fails? Just telling them what they should do always fails. Do you think that an approach, according to what you said, a good approach would be to create these small, let's say, farmer teams that can trust each other, work together, I mean, relatives or friends, and try to change all the team's behavior and one to visit the farm of the other and work as a team, 5, 6 members. I'm just thinking of a way to approach according to what you said. Thank you.
Sure. I'll borrow. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Sorry. I'm honored to your question. I think is great, and of course, the answer is it depends, right? Why are these farmers not doing X, Y, Z? Why are you as a group not doing X, Y, Z? And this is the kind of one of the key added values of behavioral science, is it gives us a methodology for actually uncovering some of that why. So we know the barriers. So in an ideal world, we would know, okay, one of the barriers is that this is counter-normative, right? No one else is doing it. We've done a study. We've learned that social norms are contrary to what we're asking people to do. So in that case, perhaps a group of early adopters modeling the behavior could be a way to overcome what's a counter-normative situation. For example, you have something called dynamic norms, which we can say, if everyone here is taking a selfie and I'm the only one that's not, I feel compelled to take a selfie, right? But if in the other hand, if a slowly increasing number of people are doing the thing, this can have a similar behavioral trigger as herd mentality. So in that long-winded way to say, that could be a really compelling methodology, and the critical nature is to understand that barrier and to work experimentation into the plan. So what are we iterating around learning? How are we learning together and quantifying the change that's happening? And the last thing I would say is that, we've been lucky enough to work with farmer field schools on some things in Ghana. We worked with the AMR team on footbath use, on disinfectant use. And this was essentially the model you just described is essentially what's been going on, using behavioral science as an experiential learning journey together with farmers. So wonderful intervention and very plausible way to approach it. Don't skip the behavioral diagnostic part. Why are people not doing the thing? But thank you.
There's a question in the back.
Thank you. Keith Sumption, formerly EUFMD and FAO. Question really for Tom. These days AI can be used to sort of generate information or answers on almost anything. So I believe probably we're in a situation now where rural farmers would find it much easier to get guidance using a question on AI than it would to find an extension worker, for example. So do you have any sort of thoughts on how that development might be, in some ways, safely managed, that information will increasingly be sought directly rather than through any other trained source?
Thanks for the question, because I'm just going to illustrate it with one example here, which posed a lot of questions in our own institution, and maybe just the same train of thought could happen, because I have the feeling that with a lot of different organizations, we are ending up in a kind of what I would call a chatbot race, like everybody is constructing a chatbot or a GPT for one specific type of function, and we have very simple hypothetical scenarios of what that really will do. For example, in our institution, we said people are losing so much time by finding the right information on the right time. They're losing information on the internet, on the intranet, on the 200 documents that are full of circulars and procedures. So why don't we basically pull that into a kind of a chat bot, and so that people actually have access, ask the question, and have the right answer. Now, that's a simplified scenario that we have out there. What we have seen was first a whole resistance army asking us extremely relevant questions on all the privacy, data, all the typical questions that you would ask. Can we rely on that? Would be the good way? We basically solved each one of these guiding questions, because also for all the resistance questions, there are also answers to cope with it. And then basically that original chatbot race initiative started to become an organizational change, because in order to construct that type of GPT according to the rules of the game, and where human decisions were in power and not just AI-related elements, we basically had to start to work together with different owners, different experts, something that does not happen a lot in an organization. So there were a lot of unintended effects of that kind of initiative. And then finally, when this whole chatbot, which was completely addressing all the ethical risk and other issues, was out there, we started to invest what is the actual impact of it right now on the original task. Are we increasing productivity? We saw an increase of 10 minutes per person that was winning actually the time. So if you multiply that by 1,000 users, there was a big gain, but the entire productivity gain was basically put into question again, because we were wondering ourselves, what if we become so efficient in non-effective models? We basically had to question the entire model behind it, and that brought us back to things. So just to make a long story short, it's not just by having people direct access to content that it really will solve the issue that they will work on. And so I think we will need much more guidance, much more interdisciplinary dialogues to get these tools to the right audience in order that they can use them, and not just jump from one ChatGPT to another Claude or to another kind of thing, so that it's a little bit more streamlined and guided. I think we're in the full experimental piloting stage on how we use that, but not yet in a kind of a scaled up version of where it really would serve our organizational or other objectives of goals.
Thank you. I don't see a hand at the moment, but I have a question myself. So for any of you to answer. So having listened to our presentations and also from your knowledge of EU FMD, is there any innovation that you can see that would facilitate the impact or increase the impact of EU FMD, including this conference for a start? I mean, is there anything that we could do more in a more innovative way in any aspect of EU FMD work that you can see now? Anyone?
Do you want me to start? I think EUFMD in the field of knowledge production already develops a lot of innovation. So I think that my suggestion or my in-depth would go towards an expanded use of what already exists. There is a lot. There is the Tom tool that Marcello is developing. There is systems for people to build their own portfolio of competencies. And I think the innovation could stand into our capacity. I want to put WOA itself also into this problem management. Members and learning communities have a lot of tools, a lot of challenges, a lot of stimuli, a lot of opportunities, but they need to be focused, and they need to be also, they need to receive learning opportunities that are sustainable for them. Imagine countries where there are only 7 veterinarians, for example, and some VPPs and then nothing else. How can these sets of opportunities be compatible with their challenges, with their capacity to absorb all that? So I think that some brainstorming and some concrete plans for exploitation of what already exists in a coordinated way. So FAO, UFMD, WOA, and even WHO, there is a lot, and optimization of this use would be for me a way to drive change.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Well, I would say that there's so much happening. EFMD is, I was intentionally provocative in claiming that training isn't innovative here, but that's obviously not true. And the incredible investment that's happening in learning and knowledge, the MEL work that EFMD is doing is an incredibly exciting trend, and that investment is definitely paying dividends. I think an additional element of that just already existing innovation and rethinking training would be working with stakeholders collaboratively to solve the hidden problems. Behavioral science isn't some panacea or silver bullet. It's actually really intentionally weak in terms of influencing people. It works best when people already want to do the thing, and you're basically breaking down barriers. You're looking at frictions. But it's just not the normal way we tend to try to solve a problem. We try to solve problems so often from the cognitive level. What's the rational reason, and how are we going to solve it from a natural science perspective? But then when we get to the field, we have this, we overlook sometimes. And that's so, working together, I think, with people is a social innovation, and you could leverage this barrier analysis, collaborative barrier analysis. We talk a lot about agroecology, but the inspiration behind agroecology was collaborative discovery. So using a scientific lens on collaborative discovery of barriers, and then testing, actually having the freedom and being even encouraged to fail, allows us to create much better 2.0, 3.0, 4.0 versions of our interventions. I mean, one of the craziest ideas that came out of some of the brainstorming we were working on was, could we just make a footpath impossible to step over? Right? There's one idea of one of the teams was have a bar that is so high that in order to step over the bar, you have to step in the footpath. You can't step around it. I'm not describing it very well. Another one was just to have it be the size of a swimming pool. That didn't work either. But the idea is, the barrier is, if you associate the barrier with the intervention, you're going to have a higher success rate. And the innovation is actually leveraging what we know about frictions and working together on them, not just on, let's say adding that to your learning portfolio. How can we work together to make it easier for ourselves to do the behavior?
Thank you. Tom?
Yep. I was looking at the conference, also at the previous conference, a bit as an outsider, and trying to look at all the different dots from the sessions here to the poster sessions that you had out there, to the different conversations. And for me, it's always important, are they interconnected so that they shape a little bit of a bigger picture out there? And that's when we think about innovation, often we refer too much at disruptive innovation or radical innovation, something that is completely changing the whole ballgame. I think innovation here is where can we start, because maybe also my presentation could give an impression that I'm against workshops or conferences. That's completely not true. It's just starting. How can we...
You told me that backstage.
Okay, no. I'm working at a training center, so how can I be against training? No, it's more how can we incrementally improve, adding from both best worlds to basically to the next step. And maybe that's the biggest question that I would ask right now. How can we move these incremental steps towards a bigger picture, towards a larger vision? Because Cortney, you rightly pointed out that in our organizations, long-term thinking is basically aligned with a biannual budget cycle, so that's not really long-term thinking. When you saw the example, I was thinking of an example of Warren Buffett, the big investor. He said to once, I don't do haircuts, and actually I looked at his picture, and actually his whole life he was doing his own haircut. And he asked, like, why don't you do a haircut? He said, I'm not going to pay 300,000 euros for a haircut. He basically calculated what it would cost over a long time to have haircuts. So maybe that's a simple question, but also making long-term thinking concrete for people, because for them it's abstract, you know, it's like big abstract goals. If you can make it very concrete on how you could contribute with a simple behavior, with a simple action, and if these incremental improvements are collected by a whole community of people, practitioners, policymakers, then maybe we're gonna step one step ahead. The problem is always stepping ahead with humans and institutions. It's often one step ahead and two steps back. So that's where we really need a little bit more of visionary elements in there to inject that kind of innovation spur. So that would be my reply on your question.
Thanks. Marcello, any reflections?
There are a lot actually, and I'm thinking about the starting incrementally. It's something that resonates quite a lot. I'm thinking about some of the activities that we have made. My colleague Valentina has driven, for example, the development of a course about passive surveillance, thinking about how we can incrementally create pathways for learning. And this is one of our challenges, thinking on how the people will use learning in the field. This probably is a kind of a dark side, no, another side of the question that was initially raised by Keith about how can the rural communities, the rural workers find the information in the future? Will they use AI? So we can provide a wealth of solutions of training, but they are in the field, and ultimately they need solutions that are usable in the field. So could it be mobile? Could it be probably the point is not about technology. And what my main takeaway from the presentations from Cortney, from Tom, and from Barbara as well is really the context matters. So we can really innovate, but you need to take care about the context.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Thanks also for your interest. This brings us to the end of this session. Before you go into the coffee break, I think there will be a brief announcement, but first join me in thanking all the speakers.
Hi everyone, Toby Tuthill, Purbright, UK. Just wanted to say a few words on behalf of GFRA to remind you about the session tomorrow. We've got a day that's based around discussion opportunities. We've got 3 sessions, one on why should we control FMD, a session on how can we use improved diagnostics, and a session on should we use novel vaccine technologies. And there'll be short presentations, but the main theme is plenty of time for discussion. We really want to hear everybody's opinions. If you've got a story or you want to contribute your ideas, this is the forum to do it tomorrow. So please come with your ideas. We especially want to hear your ideas from areas of the world outside of Europe, and we especially want to hear from our partners in industry. And the proposal is that we reserve the first row or 2 for our industry partners, industry colleagues. So if you're something to do with industry, vaccine manufacturer, please come and sit at the front and be prepared to have an opinion.
Just a short word. We expect everyone to be here. There will be a cocktail afterwards for the people that stay the whole session, the morning and the PM session. And we really want to hear all your insights, all the voices. So even if you're struggling with English, you know my English is not perfect, there's someone else that can help, and we can help translating. So don't feel that your opinion is not valid because it's not in perfect English. It can be in whatever English you can speak. So we wait for you tomorrow. It will be relaxed. We will discuss. So This is it, right? Something else?
No, that's all.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Coffee break, 20 minutes. 20 minutes. Please be back in 20 minutes.